Hello, planet Earth. My name is Chris Machete Cochran. I am your favorite comic book artist slash agent of chaos. Oh, today we got a good one for you. We are going to deep dive the story of the Acid King, which has the original link in society to heavy metal and Satan. And I must point out that when if you go like this or you go like this, you're really not giving the sign of the devil. Like you got to go like this. Just so you know, that's the actual sign of the devil. Okay, and you can't selfie yourself with that though, right? So it can't be that cool. Anyway, here's what we're talking about tonight. Roll it, Lonnie. Roll it. Roll it.
Dateline, Northport, Long Island. A quiet community rocked by reports a teenager was dragged through these woods toward a late-night ritual of death. An eyewitness said the victim, Gary Lowers, was forced to pray to Satan as he was repeatedly stabbed to death. 2 young men were arrested. James Troiano was found innocent last month, but his alleged accomplice never made it to trial. Ricky Kasso committed suicide in jail the day after his arrest. Despite numerous signs that Kasso was into Satanism and rock music associated with devil worship, police steadfastly refused to label this case satanic. The official explanation, a drug-related crime.
Yeah, that was a drug-related crime. Holy cow. Okay, so that's our story, what we're looking at right now. A lot of key words there. Hopefully we can get away with those. Wow. So here's what we got. The gentleman in question's name is Ricky Kasso Jr., and he was born 1967. He's also known as the Acid King. I remember this when I was younger. I'll divulge on that. There he is right there, Ricky Kasso, in that famous AC/DC shirt that he was wearing. Does AC/DC drive you to satanic worship and killing someone, offing someone? I don't know. I don't know. So, yeah, he's an American criminal who offed his 17-year-old friend, Gary Lowers. And this was in Northport, New York. This is Long Island, New York, right? And there's the gentleman on the left that he has confrontation with. They're both no longer with us. So this was in 1984, June of 1984. So again, I would have been 12, 13 years old. And just see, this is the thing with me is I've always listened to metal. I've been listening to Kiss since I was 6 years old. So that wasn't new to me. But this whole twist on how now heavy metal was being labeled affiliated with Satan was because I would go to people's houses with kids I knew I would meet around that age. And there'd be odd parent that'd be like, "You're not one of them devil worshiping kids, are you?" And I'm sure a lot of my friends can atone to this, being younger and having the hair and heavy metal. And being labeled as a satanic worshiping kid, man. So again, that kind of pushes you against any kind of organized religion at that age. It was almost at a time, it seemed, in the 80s where the media was trying to make their parents afraid of their kids. This was a perfect example. I'm going to dive into this a little bit more. So what we got here, there was 2 other teens involved in this. Jimmy Toriani and Albert Quinones. There we go. And they were all present when this happened. So there was the four kids there. They were all around 17 years old. And they were all under the influence of what they believed was mescaline, but it was most likely some LSD, some acid. Now, the thing about this Ricky Kasso kid who committed the heinous event is he was kicked out of his house when he was 13. Okay. His dad and his mother were school teachers. His dad was one of those football dads who wanted him to play football and was apparently pretty aggressive, more aggressive than he should have been. He was physically aggressive, mentally aggressive about his kid's football career. And he had the same name, Ricky, so it was Ricky Jr. So his dad was a football coach, a gym coach, I believe. They're both teachers. Anyway. And Ricky didn't like it, so he revolted against it and ended up getting kicked out of the house at the age 13. So you can imagine being on your own at 13. That was crazy stuff. So he turned they went to the library apparently and started researching all these books on Satan. He wanted to have a thing. He had nothing. So his thing was going to be that he knew more about the devil than everybody else. So when the kids and teenagers would go hang out in the park, which they would do, small town, this was the same thing I went through. Is you went to the park, they went to the woods, they had fires, you'd hang out and do your thing. They would go and they would do their drugs, which would be more, which I would classify more of the LSD. And eventually this dude was doing angel dust and stuff, right? Which really started really messing him up. Back when I was younger, it was more, although I did do acid a few times, I will admit to that. And wow. I'm not talking about, when I say doing drugs, I'm not talking about mushrooms or marijuana. You know, there's a lot of kids doing that. Again, back then, I guess they were called drugs, but we're going to refer to drugs in this conversation as acid, LSD, angel dust, that kind of thing. Okay. Just so we're on the same language plane here. So 13, he tried his first hit of acid and just loved it. He also tried marijuana laced with angel dust. They were dusted joints. And that was the one that really called to him, apparently. So he had his own little world he was living outside in. And he had his group of friends. They all hung out together. You know, they all did their things. So they had this forest that they would hang out in. And there was this one location called Astaki Woods. And it was this castle that they would hang out at, and it was been there forever and ever. And of course, there was a history behind this place that they would hang out at. And he would go and do his conversations. Ricky would go there to do his conversations with the devil and take tons. He would take apparently he would take 12 hits of acid, and they called him the Acid King because not only he had all these drugs all the time, but he knew exactly how many to take before you could OD, or how much angel dust you could take, and you could talk to Satan. So he had this whole lure legendary thing of this so by this time he was little. He wasn't 13. When he was really getting in closer, we'll say he's around 15, 16 at this point, when he started getting legendary about becoming the Acid King. And this kid that lived outside, this kid lives in my shed. He's been living in my shed for a week. And, you know, to stomach that, to a kid, 15, is living in my shed. To me, that's pretty crazy. And that's another thing that dawned on me, all these kids, it was normal for all the stuff that was going on. Now, again, looking back, reflecting on my own life, looking back then, there's some scenarios that I watched from this documentary that I can really, really relate to. And that is when you're in these woods, or you're in these great big parks where there's different groups of teenagers, kids hanging out. You do know if you're in the wrong area. There was a gentleman in the documentary, and he's from the band Wheatus. They did that song, "I'm just a teenage dirtbag baby." Well, the singer's from this area, and he was the same age. And he made a comment about how he would go hunting for turtles in the area. And he said, but if you heard the teenagers coming by, you know to hide, just stay still. Because the older teenagers would just come down and mess with you, which was the same way when I was younger, man. Excuse me. If we ever went out to just smoke a cigarette, or even just even that, you know what I mean? Other or smoke a joint or something like that, or have a drink before we'd go out to the arcade or go to a school dance. You knew what areas to hang out in, and you knew what areas not to hang out in. And if you did want to hang out in the certain area where the older teenagers, 17, 18-year-old were hanging out, you knew you were going to be subject to something not good. And now I never experienced anybody getting murdered or getting offed or anything like that. I keep slipping those words in there. I'm going to get flagged. I've never experienced anything like that. But I can relate to the whole era of what was going on. And again, I'll relate to the ripple effect that happened. So going back to the star of our show here, Ricky Kasso, who's living out on his own, getting known as this legendary Acid King, all right? He starts to get a group of friends around him, and he meets this older dude who's 20 years older, and they called him Father Time. Had a few other names for him, but he was a Vietnam vet. And he had some PTSD, obviously from the war, which is understandable, but he went the way of worshiping the devil. So he met Ricky in a bookstore and was like, if you want that to work, satanic book that he was reading, Ricky, you got to steal it. It's your first test. You can't pay for it. So from there, this Father Time, this older war vet, started kind of, whispering in his ear little things to do. They wanted to go to the Amityville house from the movie, from the Amityville movie, where the family was offed. Which was close to this location, right, in Long Island. So they wanted to go there and perform some kind of seance. Okay, so this is Ricky hooking up with this older dude. So they decide that they want to do this, right? There's Ricky, I believe it was his other friend, Ricky and Jimmy Chirano. they wanted to do this. So the old guy's like, well, you got to get a human skull. So Ricky started digging up a grave in a local cemetery, and he went down like 7 feet apparently. But of course, these were graves from so long ago that he wasn't finding anything. It must have been disintegrated and such. But he dug down 7 feet, and apparently he only stopped because he was tired. That's how into this guy was. Mind you, he's on all kinds of illicit drugs they're creeping him out and keeping him going. And he's living on his own. This is his whole entity of what he's doing. There's no parental figures. There's no parental guidance, which apparently, and what I'm getting from most of what I'm watching, is the biggest difference. One of the biggest differences between Ricky Kasso and most of the kids around him is that family connection. You know, there's a great intro to her where it just takes, everybody's brain is wired differently, and it just takes the right experience, the right day, the right circumstance to set some people off. And if you're going to be doing a lot of drugs, a ton of drugs, you're more apt to have this happen to you. If you're from a family that doesn't show you any kind of love or support, you're gonna look for that. And apparently Ricky Kasso was looking for that through Satan, and through that it elevated him in his little community of drugs. So eventually he got arrested for digging up the graves. They found out that it was him, and he got caught for that. So he had to go to a court hearing for it. And that was the final straw back there between his folks. I believe he went home maybe for a little while just to try and get healthy again because he had pneumonia, and hence they put him in a mental institute. And he got smart enough that he figured out that, well, if I just tell them that, if Ricky Kasso just told the psychiatrists and the doctors that, well, yeah, I'm fine, I don't believe in Satan anymore, no, I'm good, they'll let him free. And that's exactly what happened. So he went free, and he didn't go back to his folks' house after they got him committed. So he went back out on his own there. And it was that, and he just really, at that point, apparently he lost any kind of respect or condition for other people. And as he's going along here, he had that friend Gary, who ended up being the victim in this circumstance. And Gary was with him since he was in like the 2nd grade. They've been kids forever, right? Gary Lars. So Gary's one of the friends, and Gary ends up stealing a bunch of hits of acid from him, made some angel dust. And there's different, let me just have a drink here, folks. I've researched this a lot, and there's the stories that Gary did pay him back after he stole it from him and he got caught. But from my research, he didn't fully pay him back, like right away. It took a while. So they beat the crap out of Gary, Ricky and Jimmy. I keep forgetting Jimmy's name. It's such a simple name. So Ricky and his buddy Jimmy would beat up Gary a lot because he stole the drugs from him, the acid and that, right? And I don't think I think he fully paid him back at this point either. So he did finally end up paying him back. Gary was showing his face again and hanging out with everybody, you know, and a lot of the kids from that scene back in that day were saying, you know, wow, it was such a great evening. We were all tripping, and Gary was back, and Gary was even saying to us, hey, I'm all paid up. I can show my face again, which is why I think in that sentence right there, Gary said, this was one of the witnesses, one of the kids saying, yeah, Gary said, I'm back. I'm all paid up. So he's now all paid up. He can hang out. So Ricky Kasso, now this is where we get to the event. All right. So we got Ricky Kasso. Don't spin on me. That's not very nice. We got Ricky Kasso, Jimmy Troiano, and Albert Quinones. The three of them, they get Gary and they say, hey, Gary, let's drop some acid. Let's do this and that. Let's go for a walk in the woods. I've heard this in a few of them. This consistent is they bribed him by offering him jelly donuts. I guess he had a jelly donut obsession. I don't know. So they got Gary to go with him, and Gary was feeling a little like, this guy's been beating the crap out of me for the past month. I'm all paid up. I guess everything's good. So, you know, he joined them. They went out in the forest, and they lit their fire like they do, hang out, start drinking, taking more drugs, doing whatever. And Gary gets this feeling. He says to Ricky, I have a feeling you're going to hurt me. And Ricky jumps up and says, I'm not going to hurt you. I'm going to bump you. You know what I mean? And jumps on him. They start fighting. And apparently Jimmy even jumps up and starts laying the boots to Gary as well. While the other gentleman, he was just sitting there, Albert Quinones. He was like the one witness that they really needed that they couldn't find for a while. He just sat there and watched. And apparently Jimmy even handed the knife to Ricky. So Ricky stabbed. I'm going to get flagged again for that. Ricky attacked Gary And it didn't stop there. There's some grave details there. They dragged him into the forest and it went on. It was pretty brutal. It was pretty brutal. What happened? Gary was a thief. He admitted it on some recordings in this documentary, but he didn't deserve to get killed, right? Oft. So if you're watching at home and you have beverages, every time I say a word I shouldn't like that, just have a drink. Have some fun with it. Cheers. Okay, so yeah. Drag poor Gary off into the forest. That's it for Gary. They just kind of threw stuff on top of him too. So as the days go by, Gary was running away all the time and getting in trouble with the law. So nobody, his family wise, they just kind of thought, okay, well, he's not come home for 6 days or whatever, a week. That's normal. I think it was after a week or so that Ricky started phoning Gary's mom and saying creepy stuff like what he did to her kid. Man. And then after he moved on from that, he started taking other kids on a tour to see what he'd done because Gary was still there, you know? His body was. So he's taking tours of kids up there and showing them. And as it's going on, it's getting worse and worse. It's smelling everything, as you can imagine. So the kids are getting frazzled by it, but I believe there was like 12 of them, and none of them told the police anything. Because there was that mentality that I guess, they'll get me next. Or, wow, yeah. I highly recommend you watch the documentary if you're Generation X metalhead from my age range, It's really entertaining. All these kids, it's not entertaining that all these kids didn't say anything, but if you're from my era, you can go right back to this generation, man, which again, I'm going to expand on. So they're taking kids tours up there. So they feel Jimmy and Ricky Kasso, they feel like something's up, right? So they take off, but they come back to pick up some stuff, fall asleep in the car, and they get arrested. Okay. Now here's where the media jumps in, the crap hits the fan. He was associated with Satan. And when he got arrested, yeah, cops hunt killer cult. It went off the rails here. Look at him in the top right is on my screen here. He does that face. That's the classic face. And so he's wearing an AC/DC shirt. Ooh, that'll really make you want to go on a rampage. What the F, man? Craziness. I remember this when I was a kid. This was all over the place. So the media jumped on this and went crazy with it. He did it all because of Satan. It wasn't because of the drugs. It wasn't because of his upbringing. It was because of his affiliation with Satan and the music. So heavy metal was blamed to the link with Satan. He listened to metal. He listened to AC/DC, Led Zeppelin, all that stuff. So that's what drove him to kill. They also said he had a satanic cult, which was not true. Of course, the media jumps on stuff and makes it redonkulous because they get money from it. They don't care what it does to other people. They're just making money off it. They didn't help the situation at all by doing this in the least. They interviewed in the documentary. They interviewed the kids who live there, even the police that live there. The only people that said this was related to heavy metal and Satan were people that were from the media from out of the town, politicians from out of town, glorifying this and making money off it and getting their face in the paper. Again, the media, right? Again, doesn't it make you wonder how long we've been lied to? Cult of Machete, right? We do. We wonder how long we've been lied to. This is just one perfect example. Now, The Acid King, you should watch this. This is a great documentary. I think it's only on Tubi right now, but you can get all kinds of stuff on YouTube as well. Now, as I mentioned, I grew up in this era. I was younger, but I've been listening to heavy metal. I would have been like 12, 13 at this time. I've been listening to heavy metal for half my life, since I was 6 years old. And I'm talking listening to it, posters on the wall, wanting to be Ace Frehley, thinking there's nothing wrong with Gene Simmons, squirting blood all over the place. Wait, there's Ace Frehley. There you go. That's a poster from when I was a kid. Boom. There we go. That would have been like 1978. So I started getting that whole, my parents, I don't know, they're watching. Hi, folks. I'm not sure if they remember this, but I hope they do, because they were even kind of like, oh my gosh, wow, Chris, like our Motley Crue, do they really worship Satan? And keeping an eye on me and stuff like that, right? They never thought I was into Satan, because I think after maybe they kept an extra eye on me, they're like, nah, he's still collecting toys and reading comic books. He's not worshiping Satan. It's like, oh my gosh, what is Chris doing in his room there with the door shut and the heavy metal music on? And they creep open the door and I'm reading Spider-Man and, unwrapping a new toy or something. There is definitely no worries of me worshiping Satan. But all this hoopla made me wonder about it and made me do a seance. If they did not do this in the media, I never would have did a seance with my friends, which, sidebar, is a whole other story that I have to do. but I have to get somebody else on the show who's been there. One of the people are no longer with us. One of the people I cannot get a hold of, and the other one is Jim McDermott. Jim, if you're watching, buddy, I got to get John here, man. You're a hard dude to pin down, and I understand that. I miss you. I love you. So this whole media circus made me dive into it a little bit. No, I didn't dive into worshiping the devil. I just wanted to do a seance. I just wanted to see weird shit. I was a 13-year-old kid. I want to see weird shit. And plus, it's like, come on. Nothing bad at that point in my life had happened to anybody or me around me, anything like that. So I was kind of like, let's do this. I know that it's not, because I knew it wasn't really linked to heavy metal, because I wasn't turning into a Satanist. You just, you know what I mean? And me and my friends, it wasn't. And the other kids that were, the older kids that were down at the parks, yeah, sure, they were scratching upside down stars and Ozzy with a upside down cross and stuff like that. But they weren't lighting candles and like worshiping Satan. I didn't really see any of that. I don't remember, like, I remember just people saying they like Satan and stuff. He's cool, man. Do drugs, drink booze, listen to heavy metal and worship Satan. But no, nobody actually really did it. And I think you'll find that the gentleman in this documentary, it wasn't just him worshiping Satan. It was him being pushed away from his family. He didn't have anybody, man. And then he starts doing like angel dust and doing like 5 hits of acid plus, though, man. Music had nothing to do with that. That's my opinion. Music had nothing to do with that. It might have been like a sidebar for him to kind of like, ooh, oh, this is rad. And now if you look at today, all that I even talked about it is Hollywood associated with Satan? Is Hollywood associated with the devil? Well, do you think maybe it's just a show to get people talking about it too? You really got to question the media, my friends. I know information is important, but this is just a perfect example how all these news stations, there's reporters, really screwed up the system here and made people scared and worried. And of all things, making you afraid of your kids. How low is that? Right? Oh my gosh. Like, just think about that for a minute. Because right after that was the Menendez brothers, and they jumped all over that. Man, that freaked my parents out. I remember them talking about that too. It's just so in the mid to late 80s, man, they really wanted you to fear your kids. Google it. Look into it, my friends. The Cult of Machete wants you to. Educate yourself on our history. Might help you with our future, right? Yeah, not lecturing, just saying like it's an interesting thing. So as I mentioned, I felt the ripples of all this being a Canadian kid. That was the whole deal. It was, wow, you listen to heavy metal. Many parents, oh, listen to that metal, that devil music. Oh man, tons of that. So again, it puts your back up against organized religion, which again, watching this documentary gave me a deja vu of why I have my back up against religion a little bit, organized religion, because it scares me. When I was younger, it was like a cult that was against me. That's what this was like. And to reiterate myself is when I was like, oh my gosh, what's he doing by himself downstairs in the basement? They're listening to heavy metal music. I was reading comic books and playing and collecting toys. Yeah, and drawing, you know what I mean? Like Spider-Man and stuff like that. So that's how funny that is. I just find it so hilarious that they would pull something out of one situation without examining it and educating themselves. Or maybe they did and they thought, hey, we're gonna make money off this and throw flame to it. It's either ignorance or just greed, right? Generally is, my friends. Generally is. Yeah. But what a great movie. What a great movie. So it's The Acid King, and it's fantastic. So my buddy Brent had some, he's not with us tonight. He's out, where's Brent? He's out on the road somewhere, isn't he? He's doing something. So here's what Brent has to say about Ricky Kasso, The Acid King documentary. Yeah, has the relationship between Satan and metal lessened over the years, or is it just a joke? Yeah, right. So I've mentioned that the newer artists today are kind of using that as a bigger metaphor, the Illuminati devil or whatever. But yeah, they're still using it to freak people out. We both know that, Brent, for sure. What really motivated him to off his friend? Did he get seduced by the idea of Satan or just insane? There was the drugs. I would say it's the drugs, and the devil was just a path. He was alone, man. He wanted something. I guess you couldn't pick up the guitar. You couldn't like have a drawing table to try and work on something, man. You got to put yourself back in that when you're a kid too, man. That's what I try and do when I teach. It's tougher when you're a kid. Definitely. I found now 50, when I hit 50, man, it's so funny how things started to really make a lot more sense for me, and I could deal with them logically. Yeah. So sorry. How many more of these unknown stories exist that have come out? Yeah. Well, I've researched it. Not too many. Which is funny with the heavy metal, right? Like there are a few, of course. There was a rap one I was reading, like a rap. There's a new thing called rapcore, deathcore rap or something, and they sing about it's just like horror movies and rap, but they rap about it, right? So like, I have no problem with this stuff. I find it, again, like a horror movie. It's just music. So I have seen a little bit, but not as much as like the news has picked up, right, buddy? What would he think of the metal bands he worshipped actually becoming Christian? Yeah, well, we all grow up. It's a shame that Ricky didn't get to grow up. I'm going to give my final thoughts on him in a minute here. His dad seemed like every other overbearing dad. Yeah, was it just white privilege that he didn't go the right way? Was it just because, I'm just going to do what I want and I can? It's also mentioned in the documentary, like what a white person's issue, worshiping Satan. And it's true. Like it's like, you don't hear of a lot of, Asian folks going on offing spree. Got that one, because they're worshiping the devil. There are some cool movies about it and stuff, but, yeah. At least not back in that time. They were doing things like this, but it wasn't because of heavy metal, is my point, and this gentleman's point. It's happening on kids are being violent all over the world, but not blaming it on heavy metal. It's a very white thing, right? So, man, that kid... I'm trying to gather my thoughts here, final thoughts here, my friends. I really appreciate you tuning in. Before I start pimping some of my wares here, I just want a final thought on this. So I have a hard time not feeling sorry for Ricky Kasso. I know, right? I've watched a lot of stuff on it. I've read a lot of stuff on it. You know me, I go in there and I just dive into it while I'm doing my artwork and such. But 13 and having nowhere to live, hopping from couch to couch, that's tough, man. I don't know. I remember some friends of mine, and if you're hanging out at their house, if their dad came home, you got out the back door as quick as you could. That was pretty scary. And again, as a kid, you can't, it doesn't make sense, so you just move on. If you can't wrap your head around it, hey, Star Wars movie. Hey, a new song. Hey, a guitar. The older you get is more when you really start to think back on things like this and how it could possibly affect somebody growing up. And again, like I mentioned, people's makeup and their vibes and their balances. You get the wrong drug at the right time around some chaotic people. Yeah, lots of stories there you could write about. This is a true one, though. So I have a hard time not feeling sorry for him, but at the same time, and Gary goes through the whole documentary saying that he's a robber and he's proud of it. He's stealing. He steals off his friends. He didn't deserve to get offed, though. There's no way Gary deserved what he did. But yeah, I'd love for you folks to see it. I'd love to hear what you think about it. My friend Mark Buck from Ingersoll, Ontario, Uncle Buck. Mark Buck, he agrees that it's the drugs, not the music. He himself grew up in the area. I grew up in Ingersoll. And he was into the same scene. He was around me at the same time as well. And he was probably doing the same thing, going home and having his music on, but getting his action figures out and doing some drawing, right? So that's what we did back then. So thanks, Mark Buck, for commenting in there. And hopefully you can catch the show tonight. What an era the 80s were, my friends. What an era they were. Okay, so The Acid King. You folks got to watch that. Now, moving quickly on here, we're running to the end here. I like to do half-hour episodes. Machete Comics. Issue number 4 is out. It's available. You can get it from there. It is $8. Issue number 4. Issue number 5 is being worked on right now. We have our funding for all this. We're going to keep on moving and shaking. If you have the books, now okay, sidebar. We are on global television this week. Woo! Bill Walishka is doing a special on Machete Comics. My wife and I will be on there. And we were discussing the storylines to this. You're going to hear more about it. It's going to be getting more of a push. So only 100 copies of each of these, right? That's what makes a book worth money. How many copies are printed? So it's about to get a push behind this. We're about to be on global television, which is awesome. This is a 10-issue series. If you have bought the first 3 issues and you're like, wow, I don't really know what's going on, I can't wrap my head around this, good. That's good. This is a 10-issue story, and I didn't do this to make people buy every issue. I did this to write a good story, and I expand on that on global television on our interview with Bill. But so faithful readers, if you're out there and you're like, wow, I don't know if I get this. Good. You will. Oh, you will. There's issue 8. You can get 3 issues, three different, whatever 3 issues you want for, what is it, $32 including shipping. That's a great deal. 3 comics shipped to your door for $32. So you can even get 3 issues of 1 comic if you want. You can get some signed. Now let's go to our biggest seller right now. Yep, hey, Cult of Machete t-shirt. We got a report that one gentleman's sleeve was a extra large sleeve and the other sleeve was a large. So we're going to work on that for you, Jim. Thanks, buddy. You're a valued customer. We appreciate you. If you have that happening, please let me know. So far, I that's the only one I've heard, and we're going to take care of that for Jim. But that's weird. We were discussing that, and how odd is it to sit there and be like, I think my one sleeve is bigger and larger and longer than the other one. No. What? I think it is. No. Maybe one arm's bigger than the other, you're thinking, right? Anyway, Jimmy, that's a funny story. I'm glad you shared that with me. I love hearing from my members of our Cult of Machete here, you know. You can get at me on Instagram. You can get at me on Twitter. You can get at me on TikTok. You can get at me on Facebook. Get at me on YouTube. I generally hit you back unless you go ranting on about something or you're attacking me, and then I'll just ignore you. I had to delete and ban an individual this week, and it happens. It happens. Don't come at me with religion. I'm just discussing it here. Great. That's our biggest seller right now, that shirt. And why wouldn't it be? And it looks like a metal shirt from the 80s. Okay. Excuse me, folks. Sorry. My allergies are just kicking me again. But I like you, and I appreciate you. I do. All right. Thanks for tuning in to our show, live from Machete Comics. This is the Cult of Machete. I am Chris Machete, your agent of chaos and favorite comic book artist. Now, what can I leave you with, my friends? Well, I'd say from the story that we talked about, the Acid King, that you really got to second guess the information you're being fed. And how long has this been going on for? How long have we been fed information that works out for the people on the other end of it and not us? You got to look after yourself. Look into the details, educate yourself, and come out swinging. All right? Peace and love, my friends. See, I got both of them up here. I'm not doing the Sainting one. Peace and love, my friends. Take care of each other. And the universe will take care of you, right?